Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, the what, why, and how of the newspaper analysis from the civil service examinations perspective. So today we are going to discuss the Hindu Delhi edition dated 5th January 2023. The important topics which are to be discussed have been displayed on the screen and the timestamping of the same has been provided in the description box below. So before starting today's session, first let us look at the question of the week. The question asked you, agriculture subsidies have become an issue on its own. Identify why indirect subsidies are not sustainable in long run and how this issue should be resolved. You have to answer this question within the limit of 250 words. Before answering this question, first revise the DNS dated 4th January 2023, whereby Jatin sir has discussed the issues related to the agriculture subsidy in much detail. So revise this DNS and then come up with beautiful answers. Try to submit your answers on the eLearn platform and get it evaluated by our experts. Now let us move towards our today's session. Our first topic for today's discussion is the values of local self-governance. This topic has appeared at page number 6 in today's The Hindu Delhi edition. The author of this article has brought to us very interesting perspectives which are very relevant from our examination point of view also. As you can see, this topic is mainly from the Polity section, and that is why, as far as the UPSC scheme of syllabus is concerned, this topic is mainly relevant for the General Studies Mains Paper 2. So the immediate context of this very topic is the recent Patna High Court judgment and also celebration of the 30th anniversary of the local self-governance in India. So in short, I will tell you that what was the judgment all about. So there was a law in the state of Bihar whereby certain personnel of grade C and grade D of the municipalities were to be appointed by the state governments, which means that municipality did not have the power to appoint the grade C and grade D personnel, and which in turn means that the municipalities or the local self-government was dependent on the state government for the appointment of these very people. And Patna High Court has upholded this particular part. So that is why the author says that this goes against the independence of the local self-governance in India. So in this session today we are going to discuss that what are the basic principles of the local self-government, what are the key challenges in terms of funds, functions and functionaries, and what are the way ahead which can help us to strengthen our local self-governance in India. So let us start the discussion. First of all, the local self-governance has two important objectives that why this local self-governance was started in India. We all know that the local government or the decentralized modes of government was very much advocated by Mahatma Gandhi. Despite this fact, when the Constitution of India was adopted, the local self-governance was not given a constitutional status and it was mere written as the part of directive principles of state policy under Article 40. But later on, with the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment, the local self-governance in rural as well as in the urban areas was given the constitutional sanction. So why was it done? There are two important principles. First is the principle of subsidiarity. So this particular principle says that if certain action or if certain duty can be performed at the lower levels, then there is no need to transfer it to the upper levels. That means that all the actions which can be taken at the bottom level must be taken at the bottom level itself. The reason behind this is that as the jurisdiction of any government gets lessened, the area of any governance system gets reduced, then there are chances of the better public service delivery. So it is generally seen that smaller the government is, better the public service delivery is. And the second important principle is the democracy. It is also believed that when the governance system or the ecosystem is closer to the people who are being governed, then there are chances of better engagement. For example, if the person is living in a village area and if he has certain issues, he cannot directly come to Delhi and talk to the Prime Minister. Before this central level, there are obviously the state governments. And similarly, before the state governments, we must also have certain institutions to which this person can go to. And that is why the more the closer the government is, the better the engagement is. And if there are better engagements, then obviously there are greater chances for the people to be heard, greater chances for the people to hold the government accountable, and better chances to have more transparency. And we all know that transparency and accountability are the twin principles of democracy. So that is why, in order to ensure subsidiarity and grassroots democracy, the local self government in India was started with the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. But despite 30 years, there are certain challenges in India's local self governance. So the main challenges to our local government are in the terms of funds, functions, and functionaries. That is why we are going to discuss the challenges in these three broader perspectives. First, we will discuss that what are the challenges when it comes to the fundings of the local self-government. For this to understand, first we need to understand that what is the present system of funding of our local government, what is the existing system. So our panchayats, for example, which are the rural local self-government, they get funds broadly from the four arms. First is, as mentioned in the Article 280, which is about the Central Finance Commission. And this Central Finance Commission recommends to the central government that they can devolve certain funds to the panchayats. Similarly, the State Finance Commission recommends the funds to be devolved from the state government to the panchayats. The third arm is that there are certain grants also which are from the state directly to the panchayats. So this is different from Article 243I because this is the devolution of funds and this is the grants which are given by the state to the panchayats. Then there are certain scheme specific funds which are given by either the central government or the state government to the panchayats in order to implement certain specific schemes, programs, or actions. And the last is that these panchayats also have the power to generate their internal resources by the means of taxes or the non-tax revenue. However, this internal resource generation is it has almost negligible share out of the total fundings of the panchayats. So this is the existing mechanism of funding. Now, what are the challenges? The first and the foremost challenge we have already discussed is that the internal resource generation for these panchayats is very small. These panchayats have not been given enough power in order to generate their own financial resources. The second challenge is that the structure is very complex to transfer the money. The second ARC has pointed out this very lacuna. You yourself imagine that first we have center, then we have states, and then we have the local government. In this local government also we have three-tier governance structure. So center has to deal with four parts, that is the state, then the first level, second level, third level. Similarly, the state has to deal with these three levels. Similarly, the district has to deal with the lower two levels and this thing goes on. So this has become a very complex layered structure of the governance and that is why the money transfer becomes ineffective. The third issue is that the money which are transferred to these panchayats, there is a very rigid system to utilize that money. The panchayats and municipalities have not been given enough power to flexibly use this money. So there is a very high rigidity and there is inflexible use of this money which gets transferred to the local government. And the last challenge is related to the fiscal position of the center or the state governments. Yes, we agree that on the basis of the recommendations of the central or the state finance commissions, the central and the state government has to devolve certain funds to the panchayats or municipalities. But we all know that the fiscal capacity of the center and state is also restricted, and that is why the absolute amount of the money which is being transferred gets reduced. And the challenge has become more relevant in the post COVID times. So these are the certain challenges when it comes to the funding of the local government. Now comes the second aspect, that is the functions of this. So there are two major challenges. First is the overlapping functions of the powers of the various levels of the government. For example, in the rural areas, the functions at the district level and functions at the rural level are not clearly delineated. Similarly, when it comes to the municipalities, there are several agencies and departments which are working in silos, and there is clearly a lack of collaboration between these various departments, and that is why sometimes there is a power tussle between various departments, which in turn leads to red tapeism in municipalities. Similarly, in the rural local government also, there are just minor functions which are made exclusively as the power of the panchayats. Otherwise, most of the major functions are the power of the state governments or the state legislatures. If you remember the context of today's article, whereby the power to appoint the grade C and grade D people in the municipalities also rested with the state government of Bihar. So, this is the issue. Next is the challenge of functionaries. First is, as we have discussed, that the appointments and removals are controlled by the state legislature. Second is, even the representatives who are there in the local government or the people who are employed there, they have a very restricted autonomy. Next is, there is a huge shortage of staff when it comes to the local government, municipalities or panchayats, given the amount of responsibility or the amount of daily engagements which they have with the people. And fourth is the issue of corruption. So these are the broad challenges related to the funds, functions and functionaries of the local government in village as well as in the urban areas. So now we shall move towards the suggestion part, that what can be the way ahead. According to the second ARC recommendations, there are certain suggestions which, if implemented by the central or the state governments, the local self-governments can increase their efficiencies and also their relevance. The first and the foremost recommendation is that the local bodies must have their say in the state laws. Whenever the state legislature is making some law, it must consult with the local bodies as well. And for this, a suggestion is made by the second ARC that the states which are having the legislative councils, they can replace the legislative council with the councils of the local bodies. The second issue is that the tiers of the local government must be decided by the state legislature. That means that the three-tier structure which is presently there for entire India must not be a compulsion. Every state has its own economic capabilities, and that is why it must be left on the state legislatures to decide that how many tiers of local government do they want. The third suggestion is that the MPs and MLAs must not be the members of the local bodies. So presently they are the members of the local bodies, but this has resulted into the power centralization in these local bodies. And that is why, in order to increase the independence and autonomy of these local bodies, it is suggested that these authorities, which are mainly centralizing in nature, that because they are representing the state or the central government, they must not become the members of the local bodies. The fourth suggestion is that chairpersons at all the levels, that is district level, intermediate level, at the rural level, must be directly elected. This direct election will give the power to the people to elect their representatives at the nearest possible level of the governance which they can directly approach to. The fifth suggestion is there should be a clear delineation of the functions when it comes to different levels of the local government. And the sixth suggestion is there should be a continuous capacity building program for all the members as well as representatives of the local self government, whether it is the rural panchayat or it is the urban municipality. So, if these recommendations are fulfilled by the central and the state governments, then there are high chances that the challenges which we discussed in the context of the funds, function, and functionaries will be dealt effectively. So, this is all related to the local self governance key challenges, the principles, why they are made, as well as the suggestions. So, this was a pretty lengthy topic, Let us quickly revise this topic in brief once again. Initially, we discussed that the principle of subsidiarity as well as the principle of democracy advocates the relevance of the local self-government, especially in India. Then we came that what are the various challenges when it comes to the local self-governance. These challenges were classified in three categories, that is the funds, functions and functionaries. The crux of all these challenges was that still the power which is given to these local government bodies are not enough, and still there are tendencies of centralization because most of the funds which the panchayats are getting are from the center or the state governments. Similarly, most of the functionaries which are being appointed at these levels are appointed by the state legislatures. And also, there were several overlapping functions of various levels of the government, and that is why we require certain measures in order to tackle these challenges. In this regard, the recommendations of the second ARC were taken. These recommendations were: first, the local bodies must have stake in the state laws. Second, the tiers of the local government must be decided by the state legislatures. Third, the MPs and MLAs must not be the members of the local bodies. Fourth, chairpersons at all the levels must be directly elected. Fifth, there should be clear delineation of functions and powers between various levels of the government. And sixth, continuous capacity building program for the members of these local governments. In the end, we must understand that whenever we have to talk about federalism, there is a general tendency that we restrict ourselves between the center and the states. But the true federalism will come when we'll start talking about center, states, as well as the local governments. This topic has appeared at text and the context page and is in relation to the Jallikattu practice, which is a local cultural festival of the state of Tamil Nadu. This topic has appeared in the context that recently Supreme Court is going to give a verdict on the bunch of petitions on Jallikattu in the upcoming sittings. So first you should understand that what exactly do you mean by this term? What is the relevance of this particular term? This Jallikattu is a bull taming sport, and this sport is performed during the festival of Pongal in the state of Tamil Nadu. Now this Jallikattu this word has been made by combining two words from the Tamil terms, which is Sali and Kasu. So in this particular sport, the prize money is tied to the horns of the bull and the people are asked to tame that particular bull. So that is why it is a bull taming sport. Now this is not a new sport. You will be surprised to know that this sport is continuing for around 3 to 4 thousands of years because the seals which were discovered at the site of Mohenjo-daro, which was the prominent site of the Harappa civilization, that particular seal also mentioned Eru Thazuval, which is embracing the bull. So that means that it also has the historical relevance that the seals of the Harappan age also have certain evidences which shows that people of that particular phase were also interested in such type of sports. But if today's time is concerned, this Jallikattu is restricted to the state of Tamil Nadu. In other states, there are several different festivals or sports which are related to the animals. For example, we have Kambala in Karnataka, Dhirio in Goa, etc. So the background of this particular case or the context which today we are discussing is that in 2014, the Supreme Court in Animal Welfare Boards of India versus A. Nagaraj case banned this particular practice because Supreme Court was of the opinion that this particular practice violates the rights of the animals. But against this particular judgment, there was a statewide protest by the people because people felt this Jallikattu festival is an integral part of the Tamil culture and banning this practice altogether will hurt the cultural as well as religious rights of the Tamils. So that is why there was a statewide protest. And because of this very protest, the state government of Tamil Nadu passed the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Tamil Nadu Amendment Ordinance 2017, which later on was also passed as an act. So in this particular ordinance or act, Tamil Nadu government came up with certain practices, certain rules and regulations which are to be followed during this Jallikattu festival so as to ensure the balance between the rights of the animal as well as the cultural rights or the likings of the Tamils. But against this particular act, there were several environmentalists which filed a petition in the Supreme Court. And on that petition, the Supreme Court is going to give a verdict. So, this is the background of the context which today we are discussing. So, there are some important questions in front of Supreme Court. First is that whether the Jallikattu should be granted the constitutional protection as the collective cultural right under Article 29, Clause 1 of the Fundamental Rights of Indian Constitution. The second question is the ordinance or the act which was passed by the Tamil Nadu, whether this act protects the breeds of the bulls or perpetuates the cruelty towards animals. Because according to the state government, they say that the act was passed in order to protect the breeds of these bulls. But the petitioners say that this particular act perpetuates the cruelty towards animals. The third question is that whether the new Jallikattu laws were relatable to Article 48 of the Constitution, that is, Directive Principles of State Policy, which urges the state to endeavor to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. And then the third question is related to the spillover effects. As we discussed, that in other states also there are certain festivals, there are certain sports bearing the cultural significance for the people of that particular state, which also involve the animal rights. So the question is that whether the similar laws in Karnataka, Maharashtra and other states could be taken under this category or not. So these are the certain questions in front of Supreme Court. However, from the examination's perspective, these questions gives us a signal that there are certain arguments which are in favor of the Jallikattu and then there are certain arguments which are against this practice. So that is why we need to ensure that we understand this debate properly. First, we will look at what are those arguments which are in the favor of continuing this Jallikattu practice. First, as we have discussed, that it is both the cultural as well as the religious event, and that is why they protect the fundamental rights of the people who are involved in this particular sport. Second, the government also says that this is a type of festival which extends beyond the confines of the caste as well as the creed, and that is why it protects the constitutional values also. Because this particular sport is not bound by certain social sectarian point of views, and that is why this festival is one of the means to promote equality. Further, the government also says that this particular sport establishes the historical identity of the local community, and that is why it is an integral part of the Tamil culture. And because the bull is involved in this particular sport, so the breeders of those bulls are involved. They nourish their bulls, provide equal respect for their protection and safety on moral, social and economic basis. So that is why it also becomes one of the important means to preserve the local strong breeds of the bulls in the Tamil Nadu. So these are certain arguments which are in favor of Jallikattu. Now we shall look at what are the petitioners' views, that is the arguments which are against this particular practice. The first and the foremost argument is that like every humans, every species has its own right. That few years back Uttarakhand High Court gave the living status even to the rivers like Ganga and Yamuna. So the concept of rights is evolving, and every species including all the animals also have their rights, and no other species has any right to violate the rights of some other species, and that is why the bulls cannot be used as a means for the entertainment of people. Because these petitioners say that during these sport events which involve animals, there are several practices which are carried out by the people in order to make the animals more violent, so as to increase the intensity of the entertainment which the people are enjoying at that moment. For example, in certain areas, the tails of the animals are cut. In some other areas, spicy powders are put in their eyes or ears. So such practices violate the rights of the animals. The second important point is that because these type of sports sometimes become uncontrollable and becomes very dangerous, so there are huge number of deaths and injuries to the common people who are present there as a participant or as an audience. Further, some of the petitioners have also equated this event with the practices such as sati and dowry. Because according to them, the argument that certain practice is an integral part of the culture is not a very strong argument to continue some practices, because at some point of time practices like sati and dowry were also recognized as the part of the culture. But as the time changes, the practices must also change. And the fourth argument is that the fundamental duty under Article 51A G also provides for the protection and improvement of the natural environment, including forest, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for the living creatures. So, it is the fundamental duty of every Indian to have a compassion for the living creatures. And that is why also these animals must be treated with equal rights. There should not be any violation of their rights, and hence these practices like Jallikattu should be banned. So these were the arguments in favor of the Jallikattu and against this practice. So now you are the best judge. You have to understand that whether this practice should continue, and if yes, then on what grounds. So this topic has appeared at page number 5. The topic reads Silent Valley bird species number goes up to 175. And this is the very context. Now this article is talking about this Silent Valley. What is the Silent Valley? This Silent Valley is basically a national park located in the state of Kerala. And that is why this topic is mainly relevant from the prelims perspective, that too in the ecology section. If you will go by the previous year question paper analysis of prelims, almost every year there are 1 to 2 questions which are asked in relation to the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, biosphere reserves, etc. So that is why in this line today we will be discussing key facts related to the Silent Valley National Park. First of all, this is the map of Kerala and this is the location of Silent Valley National Park. The context we have already discussed, that recently a bird survey was conducted at a Silent Valley National Park, which has concluded that there were around 17 new species which were found in this park. So as you are seeing the map over here, it is located in the northeast corner of the Palakkad district. It was named as Silent Valley National Park in 1984. As far as the geography of this particular park is concerned, there is a perennial river named as Kunti Puza which almost divides this national park from between. Now this Kunti Puza is a tributary of a larger river known as Bharatpuza, which is one of the most famous rivers of the state of Kerala. This Kunti Puza is also a perennial river. It is shielded by the Nilgiri plateaus to the north and the Manarakad plains of the south. So basically this national park is located in the Nilgiri hills. As far as the climate of this park is concerned, we can witness a considerable variation in the climatic conditions because of the variation in the relief and topography of this particular area. The hills are drier and colder, the plains are humid and hot. As far as the rainfall is concerned, an important fact is despite being located in the state of Kerala, the Silent Valley National Park experiences the rainfall from the southwest monsoon as well as the northeast, which is the retreating monsoon. And this is one of the reasons that why the river Kunti Puza in this particular area is perennial in nature. Silent Valley National Park forms an important component of the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserves, which is an integral part of the Western Ghats, which in turn is the World Heritage Site termed by UNESCO in 2012. As far as the wildlife is concerned, this national park is very rich in biodiversity. Species like tigers, leopards, elephants, snakes, lion-tailed macaques, Malabar giant squirrels, etc. are found. Lion-tailed macaques are found in the Silent Valley National Park in the maximum number. Now come to the culture part. When we have to talk about the culture in the forest, the tribal areas are very important, and so are the names of the tribes. So this particular area include the tribal communities like Irulas, Kurumbas, Mudugas, and Kattu Naikars. So these were the certain key facts related to the national parks. All these facts are important, and moreover, when you yourself are preparing the other national parks, go through all the important key facts that is related to the ecology, related to geography, climate, culture, wildlife species, etc.